Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome to the next in our series of Quranic verses that have impact on me by the Public Qur'an Campaign. Our next guest is Harfiyah Haleem, who is an activist writer on Islam and on the environment. She is trustee of IFEAS Eco-Islam, which you can find at ifeas.org.uk, and a co-director of the Muslim Women's Collective. Her anthology of essays and lectures by Muslim scholars called Islam and the Environment was published in 1998, and she helped to edit the Muslim Green Guide in 2008. She's currently collaborating with Extinction Rebellion Muslims on a Ramadan campaign with workshops, a food quiz, and a collection of plant-based recipes for Iftars. So, Harfiyah Haleem, welcome to the Public Qur'an Campaign's interview series for Ramadan.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. So we ask all our guests to come up with a verse that has had particular importance in their life and explain why and discuss it a little bit. So go ahead and tell us about your choice of verse.
The verse I've chosen is counteracting bad things with what is better, which is verse 34 to 36 of Surah 41. And the translation by M. Abdul Haleem is, good and evil cannot be equal. Prophet, repel evil with what is better, and your enemy will become as close as an old and valued friend. But only those who are steadfast in patience, only those who are blessed with great righteousness will attain to such goodness. If a prompting from Satan should stir you, seek refuge with God. He is the all-hearing and the all-knowing. Do you want me to say something about that?
Yes. Tell us more about this verse, why it's important to you, and what you take from it.
Well, this is the verse that decided me finally to become a Muslim, because as a previously brought up as a Christian and having been married in church a couple of years previously, I was very reluctant to give up my Christianity, which I only just confirmed. So the thing that I was most reluctant to give up was the bit in Matthew about loving your enemy and turning the other cheek as well. And I looked in the Quran and I found this. Well, I didn't look in the Quran. I found this verse somehow or other, and this decided me that I was not losing anything by becoming a Muslim, and that even there were better teachings in the Quran. This verse explains that you cannot get rid of evil by doing evil. If you've seen the film The Time Bandits, I think comes to a similar conclusion. If you want to get rid of evil, bad things, you have to provide something better in place of them. And the thing that does the most evil in this world is people hating each other. So the obvious answer to that is not to hate people and not to be angry, as another hadith of the Prophet says. If there's one thing you learn from Islam, it is not to be angry, or control your anger at least, and inflict it on other people. So those two go together.
So,
and in environmental terms, if you're interested in that, it means that you are trying to right a whole raft of humongous wrongs that are going about in the world and are likely to destroy it completely if we're not careful. And we are getting less and less careful as we get on closer to the event. And the only thing that we're going to do to change people's behavior that will really work is to find alternatives to the things that we depend upon, like fossil fuels and all sorts of things that are pollution and plastics, and that was all part of fossil fuels really, because plastic is made from fossil oil. And a lot of the pollution that comes into the ocean comes from oil as well. Crude oil floating on the surface and killing animals and birds. And there are other effluents from oil refineries which are poisoning the water. So this is if we want some alternative, if we want to get people off oil, we should stop subsidizing it and find alternatives. And there are alternatives being produced, like renewable electricity, but the markets are not actually investing in them to any great extent, and the subsidies are continuing to go to the fossil fuel industries.
Right.
Is that enough for one answer?
it's a lot. There's a couple of points there. One is that the idea of doing something better is a way of, or doing something good for someone. It turns them from your enemy to your ally, or from your. And the important point there is, I suppose, people become enemies by the process of only thinking bad of one another. And so by doing something good for your enemy, you make them realize that their idea of you as someone who only ever is a harm to them changes, and they can see that you can be of benefit, and that is the dynamic by which you can change someone's mind and change their heart from being hostile to being close to you, because you've shown that you do good for them even if they do bad to you. And that's how you can change them from being hostile to someone who thinks, actually, this person doesn't want to harm me. He's only ever harmed me because I harmed them. So if I stop harming, then he'll definitely do good.
Not necessarily because I've harmed them either, but because they think I might harm them.
And you think of when we demonize our enemies, we say, oh, they're going to do this bad to us. They're that like this, they're like that, they're bad people. When
there are plenty of examples of this in the life of the Prophet, peace be upon him, who tried very hard to follow the guidance he received when he received the Quran.
And I think this dynamic is important. I like the way you connect it to the environment, is that you have to offer good alternatives. And you can think, if you go back in time, there's good examples. You can go back when we used to have in Manchester, where I live, before I was born, in the 40s and earlier, there was terrible problems with smog, and
they have that in China.
Smoke, and very, very bad pollution. And then they banned it, but we had then replaced it largely with much cleaner burning gas and electricity and other ways of heating homes. And if we want to get rid of pollution such as diesel fuel fumes and things like that, then we need better solutions. And people, when they see they can get just as good results using something else, but far better results in other ways, they will jump to it and take it.
Like my verse in the Quran, replacing the one in the Bible, but better.
Well, you could, yes, indeed. So it's a good way to understand how to move things forward. It's not good enough just to say I oppose this. You have to offer good, better ways of doing things. And
Allah says if you see something wrong, you change it with your hand. If you can't do that, you talk about it and condemn it. And if you can't even do that, then you should at least know that it's wrong in your heart.
This is a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad.
Faith. So this is the principle for dealing with things that are wrong in the world.
Yes. But it's an interesting thing because
making some effective action in the world.
The interesting thing about that is that the similar, if you can change it with your hand, change it. The question there's a lot of questions around that about how.
Well, one of the things you can do to change this situation is to persuade people who invest money to invest it in cleaner fuels and alternative fuels, rather than pouring it into fossil fuels, which they still are doing, and making huge profits in the process and getting huge subsidies from governments as well. So it's a very bad situation which needs to be corrected.
Well, yes, I can't talk on this as a subject. My knowledge on it is limited, but I can say that we can look at examples of the past of where some better solutions has come along that has better, cheaper, cleaner energy, and I'm sure, hopefully, that we will get better, cheaper, cleaner energy.
I could list a whole series of fuels that I've been through my houses that I've lived in over my long life. Starting with coal, and then with coke, and then oil heaters, which explode and set your house on fire, and gas fires which emit carbon monoxide and kill whole families in one go. And finally, gas central heating, where the boiler is outside and all the fumes go into the garden and into the atmosphere and cause global warming. And also lots of trees growing around the house in great profusion. So now we're looking for an alternative way of heating our house, which is not as expensive as the new kinds of heating. Heat pumps, that's called, and it's air source heat pumps.
Heat exchangers and things. There's a lot of technology out there, and I think that
a lot cheaper in the last 10 years. I was 15
indeed,
when I first looked. It's now more like £5,000.
And if you're in a good enough area to get good solar power, then that's also a great opportunity.
If you have a house that's the right way round and has got a bit of roof.
Indeed. So I think and the solar power is becoming increasingly important, and it's becoming increasingly efficient.
Power is the cheapest thing. Wind power, but people are complaining they don't like the look of it, and so they get one.
And a lot of this is about how you store energy, because demand goes up and down.
It's also about the distribution networks and how they work.
Yeah.
A lot of people, some projects we've been looking at, which are a whole group of housing associations getting together and saying, we need to help our tenants use more of the electricity provided by the solar panels we have so thoughtfully installed on the roofs of their houses, and instead of sending it all to the grid. So that's one of the problems that's happening, is that, like, even the mosque that we had actually persuaded to get solar panels, they're saying they don't know how much they get of it because it all goes to the grid.
Yes. We could get into technical discussions about that, but I don't really want to. I'm sure it's something that people can look into for themselves. It's part and parcel of our kind of custodianship of our environment, to look after it and to make sure it is not damaged. So we think of when something is haram is when something is harmful, and we keep away from harming ourselves and harming our environment in the same sense. So anyway, I think we'll call out a full video and we'll tie it up there. Thank you very much for your thoughts and reflections about this verse, and about how it is about fighting evil by coming up with good solutions and good benefits to people. So thank you very much, and hopefully we'll have another interview at another time, but that's enough. Thank you very much.